Hi, everyone. This is another new band to me called Dead Can Dance. Is it Dead Can Dance, as in the dead can are able to dance? Or is it Dead Can Dance, as in a tin can? Dead tin can dance? A tin can dance? I don't know. Anyway, Dead Can Dance or Dead Can Dance with the song The Protagonist. Well, I have just a little bit to read, so let's read that and then we'll listen. Dead Can Dance are an Australian world music and dark wave band from Melbourne. That's a bit different. Australian music historian Ian McFarlane described Dead Can Dance's style as constructed soundscapes of mesmerizing grandeur and solemn beauty. African polyrhythms, Gaelic folk, Gregorian chant, Middle Eastern music, mantras, and art rock. What a combination. Basically everything in there all at once, right? The Protagonist comes from their 1987 compilation, Lonely is an Eyesore. I get the feeling that these people like to play with words. Well, I don't even know if there are words to this one, but we'll find out. Ooh. Rather dark. It's interesting how the strings are swelling. Well, what I was saying before we move on to the next motif, it's interesting how the strings are swelling. But then the organ is so clean and precise. You know, the organ just comes dee, dee. So even though they're both playing kind of the same thing, you really hear a two-part experience there, with one being straight and clean and the other having a large growth curve in the dynamic range. One, two, three. One, two, three. Bum, 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 as a trumpet. Isn't it interesting to notice how important the entrance of each instrument becomes when there's a piece like this that is so repetitive? You could almost say hypnotic, although it's so dark and there's a sort of brooding quality, which for me kind of keeps it from being that sort of just hypnotic fading into the background atmosphere. I am tempted to say this is the type of music that you could expect to hear in, let's say, if you walk into a yoga studio or massage bodywork office where they're trying to set an atmosphere of just calm, but it's a little bit too dark for that. There is very much an element of darkness to it. And so it's not quite what somebody would choose to put on to help the client relax and breathe slowly, and just get into the calm space. It's too intense for that. I'm trying to think, where would this work? Where would it fit? Practically speaking, would I listen to this in the background? No, I wouldn't. It's not me. Maybe some people would. Would I expect to find this in a movie as part of a movie score? It's too slow moving for that. You would be looking at the same scene for long enough to get bored and walk away, and you could come back 5 minutes later and have arrived at the next scene, maybe, or just a variant of the same scene. But it certainly sets an atmosphere. I'm trying to think what could I imagine as being the perfect place to set this kind of atmosphere. There's this quality of mystery to it, isn't there? Of again, that sort of dark, mysterious element. I'm going to have to think on this, but what was I starting to say? Oh, with this much repetition, you start to really sink into each instrumental sound as it enters. And it becomes something that you settle into. You almost find a groove, a track that you're following. And so each time something new is added, it really takes on a oversized significance, a huge importance in the experiencing of the piece. It almost feels like an interruption. And even though it's just a timbre or sonic difference, not even a motivic difference, it feels so notable when the brass enters, or when the drum comes in, or when something else comes in, and at the same time, the music just keeps on going in the same way, just a new layer, a new level of complexity, but it's slowly added. We start to appreciate every little detail. It's a sort of, it kind of walks you into, coaches you into listening in a way in which you notice every minute detail. And I guess I could see even a sort of pedagogical value to this, in that those of us who have a tendency to rush through and just take it all in at once and enjoy it, it slows us down. It pulls on the reins. It makes us stop and observe and notice in the fine details, because the details are so few and far between. The subtle changes come very infrequently. And that is a very good skill as a musician to develop, but even as in your everyday life, to learn to slow down and notice. Well, maybe that's a good use for it. But surely there must be some more applications, right? Because why else would you write a piece of music unless there is a real reason for it to exist, a desire to either express something or to fill a need, to serve a role. I'm interested in your thoughts, but I'm going to keep listening. And we start to appreciate the dissonances, the places where it clashes. Like right here. Oh! And then it starts to release. But it happens over and over again. And so we learn to sink into that and just lean into that. Right there, that's the rub. That's the release. Here's the clash. There's the release. Wow, that's ominous, right? It's like a storm rolling in. Again, it's the importance of the details becomes larger than life. It starts to feel like it could be a funeral march for a royal personage. You can imagine the grand procession, the solemnity of it, the massive scale of it. What an experience. And as the music progressed, well, as I said at the end, it starts to take on mass proportions, like perhaps a funeral procession for some royal personage. But then at the end, those little chimey sounds. It somehow made me also think it could be a. Well, it certainly has processional qualities to my ears. And it has to be a slow, somber procession. There is this element of seriousness, somberness. Perhaps it's a religious procession. Perhaps it's just a procession. But I feel like the value of this piece of music lies especially in how it makes us slow down. It certainly is not suited for a movie soundtrack. It is too slow. It takes too long to progress and change. And we would just get bored and walk away. Or at least the music certainly wouldn't do anything to hold our attention on what we were seeing. So then, how could this work? How does this work musically? And it's interesting that I'm finding all these possible scenarios where it doesn't quite fit, whether it's meditation, background music, or setting a mood for something relaxing and peaceful, but not quite, or movie, but not quite, or and that fascinates me. I feel like the big value that I find in this music is the same value that we find in whenever we slow our lives down. It was all trendy some years ago to talk about slow food. The idea that instead of going through the fast food drive-through, you take the time and you cook something at home start to finish, and it's a slow process. And there's a lot of simmering time. There's a lot of chopping time. There's a lot of waiting time. There's the time when it's in the oven and you're doing nothing but waiting for it to finish baking, or however it is. It's the slowness of the process, which is incredibly important if we are going to achieve anything, accomplish anything meaningful, significant in our lives. We get the idea, living off of movies and rapid events, that things have to happen quickly and be dramatic all the time. And if there is not action and activity, then we've got to stir something up. That is not actually the case. Many times, to do something meaningful, to do something significant, the bulk of what is done and accomplished happens in the times of waiting and the times of slow, repetitive work. And I feel like this piece of music is, at the very least, a great example of that kind of activity, that kind of approach to life, where we simply have to allow ourselves to slow down, to take the time, and as I said, observe and notice and appreciate every little element as it comes, because each one is significant in its own right. And if we just rush past, we lose it, right? I'm still not sure how I would use this piece other than as perhaps an object lesson or an exercise in listening and noticing in a pedagogical context. But I'm really curious to hear from all of you. How do you find this fitting into your lives, into your listening habits? Are there people out there who just love to listen to this in the background? I don't know, but I'm awfully curious now. And it's interesting to find a piece of music that I can appreciate on this level, and yet at the same time be a bit baffled of where would I find this actually playing? And so I'm looking forward to your comments, and I'll see you soon.